Well, welcome back to the True Blue Everton podcast with me, Alan Myers, and Tony Grant. And Tony, well, let's get straight to it. Great weekend at the weekend. I know you went to the game. I couldn't get there. But a 2-0 victory on the opening day of the season against Crystal Palace. Never made it easy for ourselves in the first half, but what were your overlying views of the game itself?
We'll go into the game. I was a little bit, I wouldn't say apprehensive. I wouldn't say excited either. I was a bit despondent because we haven't bought a right back. We haven't bought a striker. Jake O'Brien wasn't playing centre back. So I was a little bit despondent walking the game. And then the game set out, and I thought young Adam Wharton was early on the game was running the show. And I thought it's going to be a bit of a replica of last season where they're playing the football. Look like we're waiting for them to score before we kick into life. And they had two great chances to score. But then on the flip side of it, there were some real positives. I thought George in the first half was getting us up the pitch and looked quite exciting, albeit there wasn't really an end product with him. And I thought Roll, even though I was a bit apprehensive of the fullback position, Roll actually played really well. You know, you made the point of him going forward. It's not going to be an issue with him. I suppose Palace was a good game for him because he don't really play with wingers. So I suppose it was a good game for him. And he showed lots of times, how keen he was to get forward. Didn't really get challenged as a fullback really in the game.
And I think that's key, isn't it? Though you're talking about that. You're talking about when you're a bona fide right back, as you say, or you're centre half or a central midfielder, you almost know the little specialities, if you like, of that position. Remember Tony Hibbert, who, I think he would admit himself he wasn't the most skillful of players. But he knew when to make a tackle. He knew where to make a tackle as a right back. You think that's where maybe against the likes of Bournemouth who play on the front foot, that he may be tested more?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if he's going to persevere with him as a right back, the manager obviously sees something in him as a right back. It might be certain games he shines. We don't know. He might evolve into being a really good right back. We don't know yet. But yeah, what you're right is, especially away from home, you are going to be getting tested. Someone like a Nibbo, you're talking about Tony Hibbert there, he'd have many tools of being one-on-one and not knowing when to dive in the box or when to make that tackle. But at the same time, going forward, Tony wasn't probably as productive as Merlin Roll's going to be. So I suppose it all depends where you want to sit on that. Time's going to tell. I personally would love to have seen us buy a right back, and then
we still might.
Merlin Roll could have challenged them for the right back position then, rather than challenging Jake O'Brien, because I want Jake O'Brien to be centre back. I wanted to give him a go with Jared, and Jared looked like a Rolls Royce at the time. I thought Jared was in second gear Saturday, to be honest with you. It looked like he got injured at one stage. We were all fearful for him. But the game was really easy for Jared on Saturday. He didn't have to break sweat, to be honest with you. And as the game wore on, Everton's midfield five, I'd say, were really loads of legs. They moved the ball quite quick. And we were too much for them in the end. I think they sort of give in now. They look like a team who are going to be in trouble.
We talked about them before, didn't we? And we said that there was a lot of change there with Glasner going, other players leaving. Maheta has got his problems there with his contract dispute, and it doesn't seem a happy place, does it, at the moment?
No. And we're going to have much harder games than that, because in the first half they could be going in 1 or 2 up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if they do, we probably don't score that goal in the first half that Kieran scored, which is, by the way, was a fantastic strike. Got some venom in it, so it was a brilliant strike. But you know what football's like. If you go a goal behind, a lot of the pictures you see at 0-0, they won't happen. It's a totally different game. So we've got loads more to do, and obviously we've got the game tomorrow, haven't we? And then we've got another away trip to Bournemouth, which are going to test the stuff we're talking about. I was apprehensive going again because we never had a right back, we never had a striker. Well, the striker scored. and the right
Yeah,
back played really well.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So happy days on that one. Yeah.
So I'm wrong on that, but I don't think I am in a long scale. In a
No,
long
no.
term, I don't think I will be. You know what I mean?
Well, as they say, one swallow doesn't make a summer, but it's
No,
great to see. It's great to see
great to
the
see. Yeah,
the win come. First game of the season. I think it's 5 years since Everton have won their first game of the season. So it was a welcome win. As far as you mentioned Jake O'Brien before, and the news this week from Paddy Boyland in the Athletic, that Everton would be willing to listen to offers for him. I mean, could you imagine any scenario where David Moyes would allow Jake O'Brien to leave the club without an adequate replacement?
I'd be very surprised at. I mean, the kid played out of position last year, probably 90% of his
I think
games.
it
And
was,
I,
yeah.
I think he was ever present almost last year, was he not? For most of the
Well,
season, he played.
lot
Maybe
of
the
games
start.
at right back, yeah. I can't remember
Um,
how many, but yeah,
and he's 6'4". We all know he's not a right back, even but he actually done all right there at right back,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But when he played centre back, we done even better, and that looks his natural position. There could be a little bit where him and his camp are a little bit unhappy that he hasn't got the centre half position. He's a young boy, so there could be a little bit of that in it. If that's really coming from Everton, I think it's poor by Everton if that's coming from Everton because the season's only just started. He's a good play great. Like he looks like a cracking kid. I'd be surprised if Moyes wants him to go. To be honest with you, I don't see Moyes wanting him to go.
No, I mean, I take your point about maybe the players a little bit thinking, well, I'm not going to play where I want to play here because he was on the
Yeah,
bench, wasn't he, at the start of the game, and and that must be disappointing for him because he's 25, it's a big time in his career. But surely, if I mean, I don't know. I mean, if he says he's not happy, and we don't know whether
yeah,
he
yeah,
has said that, but if he
yeah,
says he's not happy, does the manager say? But I just cannot believe we've got basically four proper centre backs, haven't we? In Tarkowski, Keane, Branthwaite, and O'Brien. And you look at it and you think, well, Tarkowski is another year older, so too is Keane.
yeah,
Branthwaite has had his injury problems, which we'd like to see him for an extended period, get them out of the way. It would, unless they were bringing in somebody, like for like, I think that would be almost,
yeah,
silly to let him go.
yeah. I think you need four centre backs. I don't think
100%.
we could. I don't think we could put up with a back four of Roll, Keane, Tarkowski, and
Mikalenko.
Mikalenko.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
think.
I would agree.
No, you're almost going back in time, aren't you? In a
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
you know what I
Mm.
mean. Um, and that might actually happen. But yeah, I don't see the club wanting Jake to go. The kid's done great. It's not as if he's come in and bombed out. I could see the club wanting to get rid of Patterson because
Yes.
they've given him
It's
some
not
game
worked, has
time
it?
and it's not worked. So I understand that one, but getting rid of Jake just wouldn't make any sense at all. And for Jake as well, to be honest with you, even though I think he's been brilliant for us, he's not going to go to a top 4 or 5 club.
No,
So
no.
it's like, where are you really going to go in England better than Everton? You're not really going to get a club better than Everton, even though he has played great and he should be playing for us. But I don't think he's going to get to a better club than us. So I think he's just got to bide his time till he gets that spot, and then the manager's got to keep him in there. That's
Because I
what I
think
think.
he's going to be needed at centre half, isn't
Oh,
he? At some
definitely,
point,
million percent, yeah,
there's
yeah.
no two ways about that. You mentioned Tyreik George, I think earlier. What do you make of him? Because he's come in, he looked lively, didn't he? I watched the game on, the highlights of the game, and I was listening to it on the radio, and there was the commentators were quite, positive about him, and I just want to link it in a way to what we spoke about last season was Jack Grealish, and I know you were sort of not keen on maybe bringing him back. It does Tyreik George almost cement that for you?
Listen, I love Jack as a player, and Jack's a fantastic footballer. So my whole talk around Jack wasn't anything to do with his ability.
His
It
ability,
was
I
it,
know.
was- it was almost just to do with the physicality now of the game. And I love footballers, but I think we've got in Kieran and especially Hackney we've bought now
Yeah,
and James Garner. I think we've got some brains in there. And listen, in an ideal world, I'd have all of them. I'd have the lot. But I know under Moyes, it's not going to happen. That we're not going to have all these players. And if Jack came in, he's playing ends of. But the difference with this kid's got energy. Yeah, and he get the ball and he goes. He gets at what he did on Saturday. The only thing which hopefully he'll get in his game, which I'm sure he will. I'm hoping he gets in the game because it's not easy. Is an end product. And if he gets an end product, because he's got so many body swerves and feints, he will get shots away. You see. So if he can find an end product, you're going to have a good player on your hands. But that's a big if.
And that's usually the situation with wingers and that, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you want, all the weaving and the outing and the turns and all are all great, but it does have to mean something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, there's a lack of wingers now. You don't see many wingers no more. Back in the day when we had wingers, like Giggsy just comes into mind there. Players of the top level, and Robin of a top level.
Yeah.
Things happen in the final third, and goals and assists happen. So to jump, you've got to have aspirations of getting to that level. So if I'm young George, I'm sure he watches clips and watches his own clips back. If he can hone that and develop that end product, you'll have a real good player on your hands. So time's going to tell him that. But all I'd say is the first game, he was exciting. He goes one way too often, so he's got to be careful that defenders, when he's up against a right back, because he was up against a wing back, you see, a little bit different. When he's up against a right back, he's going to have to change his game a little bit. He
needs to mix it up, yeah.
But at the same time, the kid's done ever so. I thought he got us off our seat anyway.
Yeah, well, that's all you can ask, I guess.
Yeah.
Look, it's a good start, as you say. We're in the last week of the transfer window. We've got the game against Preston, which we'll talk about in a moment. But we're still, the right back position is still a problem, isn't it? I interviewed David Moyes on last Friday before the game, and I talked about a right back, and he I know whether or not he was saying this because there's no money there, or because the guy that he really wanted, and I think it's Douay of Strasbourg, is probably not going to come. Still might, but probably not. Now that we see a story that PSG are in for him, and I think, if that's the case, I think you're on a loser there, aren't you? But, he sort of was moving away from getting a right back and talking up the Merlin role, talking up the Jake O'Brien, talking up the fact that we have other players that can cover that position. Like I say, we don't know what he means by it. He might have been sending a message to the owners, who knows, but I think, how essential is it? I asked him this question, how essential is it that we do get a right back?
It's almost like, why haven't we got one? Like, we've got a new stadium, we've got these billionaire owners. Like, what's stopping us having a right back? Spending a bit of money on a right back? I mean, I'm sure we've turned over a lot more money last year than we have in previous years. I wouldn't have thought our wage bill is anywhere near the top 7 teams, top 8 teams. I wouldn't have thought so. Why haven't we got a right back? Why are we still wheeling and dealing? This is the part that really infuriates me a little bit.
It's confusing, isn't it?
Well, it's just, there was a conversation on Twitter all last week about who the big clubs are, and I was having a conversation with my mate Robbie the other day. You go back to the 80s, and it was, Liverpool, Man U, Arsenal, Everton.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was those
Right?
4, yeah.
In the 80s, it was. And you look forward now, 40 years later, and it's still Liverpool, Arsenal, and Man U. But we've dropped out. We've dropped out of it now. Because,
we have,
because the Premier League's come in. We haven't done nothing in the Premier League apart from just stay in the Premier League, right? We haven't done nothing in it. Finances have been up and down. We have had some money with Farhad brought lots of money in. So we have had money. And now we've got this rich owner, we've got this fantastic stadium, but yet we're still wheeling and dealing. And it's like, that belongs at other clubs. It doesn't, that belongs at Burnley. You know,
Yeah, I mean, we look at like, so you say that, but we look at like Coventry and Hull City who've spent more than Everton this window.
yeah,
And
yeah.
people, I was on the same discussion that you were talking about, but also people said to me, well, they've spent 160 million since they've been here, but they've had 3 windows. That's not a lot for 3 windows. If your aspirations, and this is the question, this is the key to it, if your aspirations are to go and challenge at the top of the league and get European
But
places, that's not enough.
Yeah,
And it's what you want, isn't it? If you're going to try and
yeah.
do it on the cheap, relatively cheap, and I listen, I know they're spending money, but they got the club for not really what they should have paid for it. So I mean, I don't think there's any
But you
excuses, and
know,
I
you
just
know when
wonder.
you dust down out from last year, you dust yourself down from last year as a club, whether you're on the board or whether you're staff. We need a right back. Now I know, forget Mail and Roll for a minute, because you could easily say we've got a kid in the academy, he'll do a job. He'll do a job, right? It happens to be Mail and Roll, who never come as a fullback, but he's doing a job for us, right? But surely, lassie, you dust yourself down, you go, right, we definitely want a right back because we want to get in that top 6 or 7. So go find me a right back. If he's 30 or 40, but we're going to pay it.
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean,
priority, isn't it?
are we miles? Are we that far off? You talk like going back in the olden days where we have got to find an academy lad to go in there, or find an Alan Harper and put Alan Harper in there. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Which is
yeah,
what
yeah.
Mail
A
Roll's got to be
utility player,
careful.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
going to be called. He's going to be our new Alan Harper, isn't he? So that's what infuriates me. You go to match. There's 50,000 of us going to match. And don't get me wrong, Saturday was a great victory in the end, right? But we know this isn't going to happen all the time, and we should have come into the season with a new right back. We should have had a new striker. But anyway,
But
yeah,
you look at. I've seen today, Liam Delap, who we've allegedly been. I mean, I don't know for 100% sure. I think they have, but someone that we were looking at and maybe wanted. You look at him. He's going to Nottingham Forest for 45 million. Now that rules out. Believe me, that rules Everton out.
but it
You
shouldn't,
know,
though, should it?
it
It
shouldn't.
shouldn't.
And this is the thing. If you want to, and the sad thing is that if you're not willing to pay these sorts of prices, whether or not I mean, where I don't think we've paid over 20 million for anyone yet this summer.
Yeah,
So I don't think Hackney was over to. I can't remember the
yeah,
figures off the top of my head, but I don't think there was anybody over that sort of price.
yeah.
We've done. Brennan Johnson was a swap deal with Dwight McNeil, which
Mm.
you could argue anything on that one. But I just think if we are going to challenge, if you really want to challenge for that top 6, which is essentially what we should be, the minimum I think we should be doing as a club, maybe not as a squad at the moment, but as a club,
Yeah,
then we've got to do that, and
yeah,
we've got to match those teams,
yeah. It's not even a matter of spending 40 mil. What I'm saying is, go and find your right back.
find the right
Go and
people.
buy it.
Yeah,
Go and buy it. It might be a £15 million, but go and bring someone in,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then have Mail and Roll to challenge
and then
him.
coach them. Yeah,
Well, you'll have Mail and Roll to challenge him. But if Mail and Roll happens to be a better player than him, one, you
yeah,
got your recruitment wrong, but doesn't matter.
yeah,
You got Mail and Roll, and you were going to start him anyway.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and then you got Jake Keane, Jake
You
O'Brien.
look at the lad at Blackburn, Alabiusi, and there's a lot of good things being said about him. He had a
Correct.
really good
Yeah,
season last season. So you
yeah.
think to yourself, and you could probably get him relatively cheap, I would suspect. You know what I mean? And you think to yourself, okay, go and take a chance on that, and
Well, you
see
know who will
how.
take a chance? Crystal Palace will take a chance on him, won't they? That's what will
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah,
It's the same
yeah,
with Adam Wharton.
yeah,
Adam Wharton's on your doorstep.
mm,
He's on your doorstep, and he ends
yeah.
up going to Palace
And
for
now, and
20
now
million.
he's
So
going to go for
I'll be
80.
into. Yeah, I'll be used to be the same. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Look,
yeah.
I mean, I think we will. Do you think we'll? I think we'll buy 2 or 3 players before next Tuesday. Are you of the same mind, or you're not convinced? Or
Do you know what? I don't get me wrong. I don't understand why you get them at the very, very end.
yeah,
The days of saving a few quid, I think have well gone past us, haven't they? You know what I mean?
yeah.
I mean, you're talking about giving players 150 grand a week now, 100 grand a week. So saving a little bit, a few hundred grands on because we're waiting, it's a load of rubbish all that, isn't it? It's
I
like,
think, yeah. Look, I think as somebody who's been in there and been in transfer dealings, I do understand sometimes why it goes to that late. I mean, you were talking before about the Premier League, when the Premier League and we sort of got left behind a bit by your Chelseas and your Arsenals and all these. Uh, you know, I think at the time we had the wrong millionaire in Bill Kenwright because he could only do so much. He
Yeah,
was never
yeah,
going to match
yeah,
your Abramoviches and all these people, So that's where we got. I think that's where we really lost our ground in that time. We just couldn't cope. We had to go week by week, hand by hand. So um, as far as the transfer window is concerned, I think there is a bit of especially this year with the World Cup, there is a bit of late 11th hourism, what I call 11th hourism. So I do sort of get that. And it depends on when you're in Everton's position, you are almost depending on bigger transfers down the line, to happen first, which opens up opportunities for you.
possibly. Of
Uh,
course, yeah,
yeah, I do get that. But I think if we don't sign two or three players, and I'd like to see a right back and a striker personally, I think we will struggle. I think we will. I don't know whether we'll struggle in the season. I think we'll be okay. We're fine, but I think we'll struggle to break into that top six again.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
in the end, it will show itself at
yeah,
some point.
yeah. I agree with that. I think I'd like to see them players come in. Obviously, I'd like to have seen them coming earlier. That's not happened, but I'd still like to see them come in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll talk about transfer deadline day a little bit at the end. When we both
Oh
had
yeah,
good experiences. Me from a sort of inside the club, and also from a Sky point of view. And you, of course, as a player, will have had an experience
yeah,
being transferred out. But just before we're looking at Preston in the cup. Listen, they've not had a great start. They were turned over by Wolves, I think, at the weekend pretty easily. They've lost the lad whose name Millie they
White,
call him. Uh,
White,
yeah, but they've lost a couple.
yeah,
They've
yeah,
lost a couple. One to Wrexham and the lad his second name escapes me, but a good striker. I liked him. I thought he was a lot of aggression, sometimes too much aggression.
yeah.
But we'll have. I mean, do you expect many changes? We've heard this week David Moyes say, what would you rather have? What's more important, staying in the Premier League or winning the cups? Of course, he says he wants to win a cup and he'd love to be involved in the cup and he takes them serious, but he has to balance that with staying in the. I mean, is that fair comment, or do you think it's a little bit over
Well,
the
no,
top?
I don't like the comment, to be honest with you. I really don't. It's the start of the season. You have a choice. You can either be pessimistic or optimistic, can't you? You
Yeah,
can be one
yeah,
or the other. As the leader of the team and the spokesperson for the club to the fans, why not send the 4,500 who are going down the M6?
mostly, yeah,
Go there, as if we're going there with loads of enthusiasm that we're looking forward to this because our leaders have spoke certain words, but Moisey's got a certain way of being really dour, hasn't he? It is dour. So I didn't welcome that because I've said for years, if Rafa Benitez doesn't take us down, no one's ever going to take us down. We're not going to go down, right? Because that
good
was a
point, well
setup.
made.
Well, that was a setup, him coming in, but and he still didn't take us down. So if he didn't take us down, we're not going to go down. So for that manager to say, "Do you want to be in the league this year?" The league's not going to be that good. This league, there's going to be 5 terrible teams. Crystal Palace being one of them, right? So whether Moyes is managing the team this year, or as we said it last week, Mary from the kitchen managing the team this year, right?
Mm,
That team's not getting relegated,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, go. So,
This squad is too good to be
it's
talking
not
about
good.
the
Alan, it's not.
choice, isn't it?
We've seen loads of. I've played in loads of teams who've fought relegation. We haven't gone down for some reason, Everton have got. It's just not going to happen. In the same way, Liverpool will never get relegated. Now, is that going to make great news? No, because everyone would agree with me. Arsenal will never get relegated. Yeah, you could have a manager one day who goes, "We've got to make sure we stay up." Right? Well, that doesn't make any sense for them clubs. So why should it make any sense for us? We've got Evertonians. We're arguing last week. Who's a big club? Well, we're not getting relegated in the same way. Them words do not cross Liverpool's voice,
Yeah,
Arsenal's voice. It doesn't
lips.
cross
Yeah,
them. So changing culture your manager, stop talking about relegation. Just stop talking about it for once. You know what I mean? You're playing Preston, as you just said, are just being battered at home by Wolves, right? Now, they're only one league below you, so it's not an easy game. You know, it's not an easy
Yeah,
game. So
you're
it's
not
going to
going
be
there just to walk it, are you?
oh,
You know,
no, you're not. You're
no,
not.
no, of
And they will play their best game against Premiership opposition.
course, yeah,
All
yeah.
Championship teams do. So it's not going to be an easy game. Now, the changes he makes, you know, scare me. They scare me because I'm not sure the lads who are going to come in, they're ready for this game. I'm not sure they're going to be ready. And if he makes too many changes, it could come back to bite us again.
I was going
And
to
then,
say, is that about too many changes and players just not being used to playing with each other, or is that maybe those players aren't good enough to meet the Preston challenge?
well, that's what, so, you know, naturally you think playing against the Championship team should be much easier than playing against the Premiership team, right? But coming into that game away from home, it's not the case.
No, not with
The
the crowd and all the rest of it.
the pace of the game is a different pace. It's a totally different pace. How they get stuck into you is totally different than the Premier League. It's a different game. So young Dibbling is going to come in, isn't he? So young Dibbling's going to come in, who's probably more suited to play against Palace on Saturday than he probably is against which sounds crazy.
No, I get your point. Yeah,
But if it's not going well, he'll start getting the ball will be coming off him. And, you know, I'm just, if he comes in to a strong team and there's only one change or two changes, then it'll be fine. But if the manager makes 5 or 6 changes, I really fear for us.
who would you change from Saturday? What would you rest anyone in particular and
No,
just
do you
say,
know
okay,
what? I'm a big believer of getting your strongest team, getting them full of confidence, playing them, and then
continuity
take your 5 best players off.
off when you've won the
I'd
game?
take them
Yeah,
off, mate. Yeah. So I'd start with Key, get them all playing, get them bouncing, enjoying the game. You know, it's a lovely time to play football pre-season,
yeah, yeah,
still
yeah.
early season.
Summer, yeah,
I'd hate to be um, a Kieran Dewsbury sitting on the bench and the manager saying that's 20 minutes, go on. I've never
yeah.
understood it, mate. Like,
No,
you've been sitting down for 60 minutes and then
yeah.
go on for 20. Now,
I
you're
do understand, like, that, you know, I've never really understood, sorry, the fact that they don't play the best first, and then, and they always bring these lads on to try and, but anyway, I mean, listen,
anyway, yeah.
let's see what he makes tomorrow, and what the team is tomorrow. But I
But
think,
yeah,
certainly after the comments, you would hope he wins that game, because again, you're under sort of pressure now to say, well, hang on, if you rest the players, and it's the age-old thing, and I think what lays heavy on everybody at Everton, everyone involved, and I'm sure it does with David Moyes as well, in fairness, is that it's 30 odd years, 31 years, is it? Maybe 32 this season, where we haven't won a trophy. And that is the longest. It's actually more than double the longest we've ever been in the history without a trophy. I think before this spell, it was 14 years was the longest, which in the
and do you know
70s.
what, Al? The terminology from him going into the game, 95, we were fighting relegation.
Yeah.
And the FA Cup come around, and we weren't going. The manager weren't coming out going, "Oh, listen, we have to stay in this league. We have to watch." No, you're playing Norwich at home. You're going out there to beat Norwich. Just go and beat them, and then get through the next round. Then go and beat whoever, and get through the next round. So coming into before a FA Cup, a cup game, and you're talking about staying up. That's such a defeatist attitude. It's unbelievable. It really is. So yeah, that terminology's got to change for me, because Everton going to Preston, as you said, have lost a couple of good players. We should win that game and be in the app for the next, but not by changing 6 or 7. If you want to change 2 or 3 players, for me, fine, because they could have picked up knocks anyway. You
Yeah.
changed them anyway, right?
Yeah.
But not 6 or 7. That's the big one for me.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. Look, so we talked about transfer window, and we'll end this podcast on some sort of experiences we both had within the game. And yours was, I think, when you left Everton to go to Manchester City, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was 99, and it was Christmas. and Joe was the manager of Man City.
City,
Joe
yeah.
Willie. And my agent had phoned me to go up, and it was Boxing Day, and it was horrible. The weather was horrible. It was pitch black. I remember going to an hotel in Manchester and then waiting for the physio to turn up, and he didn't come, and then he didn't come, and then he didn't come. Then he did come. He fell through the door. He was rotten drunk because it was Boxing Day, wasn't it? Of course, he was
Yeah.
rotten drunk. But obviously, I passed my medical because there wasn't a medical.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my only really time, the other ones were a bit, wasn't really at the end of the window or starting, but this was in. So I signed for City on it would have been the 27th of December, 99. Yeah,
The day after you'd been up and sat in the
more or
hotel
less.
waiting for the physio.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, when you're leaving, Toe, how do you look back? I mean, did you want to go at the time?
Do you know what, Al? I had 18 months of my contract left, and I was off that era where if you're a footballer, you have to go and play. The era's different now, where lots of lads are happy not playing.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, the era I was, you had to just go and play. It was sort of an unwritten rule. If that meant on loan, you went on loan. You would never be happy just sitting not playing because there was only two subs, so you were always in or around it in a way. Do you know what I mean? I mean, maybe it went to 4 or 5 then at 99, but early on there was only two subs, so you were in and around it all the time. But if you weren't getting on the pitch, it gets to a stage where you get to 26 in your age, and you think, I just want to go and play on a Saturday. I just want to play.
yeah, yeah.
And to be honest with you, I refused. I refused the contract at City. So I was coming back home. So I didn't want, and I wasn't sold on going. To be honest with you, I
No,
love Joe and I
yeah,
love
of
Willie,
course, yeah,
and City are a huge club. And at the time, I wasn't I wasn't playing under Walter. Um, So it was like, and then your agent gets in your ear, and before you know it, they've changed your mind, and you go. But it was almost just going in to get my boots the next day. Yeah. Even though I've been there for
it's so
nearly 10,
normal.
10 years, from
Mm.
16, left school to
Wow.
probably 26, with all the different managers and different players, you just pick your boots up and go. And before you know it, you're training on a different training park with
Putting a
different
different colour
lads,
kit on.
different
Yeah,
types of laughs.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's just football. But that's
yeah,
the part and parcel of football, isn't it?
yeah. Of course, yeah. Well, we
How,
had. I mean, me from my point of view, obviously, I was on the very first sort of major transfer deadline day when when Sky started. We never really had. There was a transfer deadline day, but it wasn't like it is now. That big performance, and I was actually sent to Everton's training ground, Finch Farm, because they were signing Louis Sahar.
okay.
Would you believe? And then I got a phone call. Get over to the Etihad Stadium straight away. Manchester City are being taken over by the Abu Dhabi group,
Yeah.
and so we left everything. We left everything about Louis Saha, and we just drove over to Manchester City, and then there was guys behind me with Arab dress on and everything, dancing, and it was what a crazy day, and then
Yeah.
it culminated in the end about midnight when they were trying to sign Robinho. And
That's right. Yeah.
it looked like it was off, and there was a big gang of people around about 10 o'clock. And I actually announced that it looked like it was off. And all these people just went off into the night. It was pitch black, and they all disappeared into the night. And then around about 11:30, it was back on again. Next minute, all these people appeared, again, where they were coming from, I don't
Al,
know.
what year was that about?
That would be, I think, probably 2010, 2011, maybe.
It shows, doesn't it? So within 9, 10 years, they've gone from buying Tony Grant on transfer
Yeah,
deadline to buying
to
Robinho.
Robinho. Mind you, I know which one I'd be picking out of the two,
Yeah,
to
of
be honest.
course.
But
Yeah.
but the funny part of it, I actually got kissed live on air when I announced that
Okay.
Robinho had signed at midnight. This
Yeah.
guy came over. It's quite a famous picture. They came over and just kissed me on the cheek. He was that delighted. And then all the crowd went because obviously that was it. Then the transfer window had shut, and I just turned around and there's these two old guys, and they must have been in their late 70s, and they were just standing there, the two of them, just looking at me. And I said, "Are you okay?" And they said, "Yeah, is that it now?" And I said, "Yeah, that's it now." It's about 1:45 at this point.
Yeah.
And then they just turned and walked off into the darkness. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? And these are the madness, of transfer deadline. But from within the game, I remember. You may remember this in 90. Oh no, well, actually, it might have been when you were gone. Transfer deadline, because in those days, transfer deadline day was March, the last Thursday in March. It wasn't. We didn't have the windows then. It was just that. I think it was something like the 27th or 28th of March, and we'd signed Kevin Campbell on loan, God bless him, and Scott Gemmell, and I was waiting at Belfield for both players. And I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. Scott Gemmell comes and he has a little photograph taken on the on the Belfield tree, as you all did. And then I'm waiting and waiting. And Walter comes out with his suitcase and he says, "What are you waiting for, Al?" I said, "Oh, I thought we'd get Cam Campbell." He says, "Yeah, well, he's in Turkey, and because he was only coming on loan at that point, you see, so he didn't need to come here at the time, and that was that. So I always remember that one. That one sticks in the mind. And then the other one was. The team were away. You may have been there at this point. I don't know, but the team were away in Italy in Choco. You remember Choco?
Yeah.
And we'd signed Thomas Gravison, and there was nobody left at the club. I met him. I arranged to meet him at Belfield. And he came in, and he had these mad eyes, and he was just looking at me, "Hello, mate, hello, mate," So I said, "Oh, right, okay." I said, "Do just do a quick interview, for the club call, thing." So he says, "Yeah, no problem." So I said to him, and it's the first time I've ever laughed directly in front of a player's face. I just couldn't help myself. And I said to him, "What do you know about Everton?" He says, "I know we have the greatest goal scorer called Dean Dickinson." And like, and I just burst out laughing, and he's looking at me as if to say, "Why are you laughing?" Poor fella had tried his best, to get Dixie Dean, obviously, but he was Dean Dickinson. And then the last one I would remember was, and you again were involved in this, and when Jordan Rhodes was going to go to Hull City, and we'd done a deal basically, and I left Ewood Park having done the deal, been involved in doing the deal. And I only got, and anyone who's been to Ewood Park, there's a big hill that goes up to the motorway. You go up the big hill. And I'd got to the top of the hill, and then we hadn't sold him, So you just an insight. I got a phone call from India to say we hadn't sold it. And like just an insight really into, and people think it's so easy, the transfer window, and, and just, but honestly, it must have been 2 miles I'd travelled from when we'd sold him to when we hadn't sold him. It was just, I had to drive back and tell the managing director that it wasn't happening. But I don't think Steve Bruce at Hull was very pleased on the night. But yeah, so strange old thing, and I think we're probably in for a few more shocks like that of surprises.
Well, we'll see what the next couple of days brings us.
Yeah, and let's hope we're going into that with a win at Preston, into the next round of the Cup, and a win at Bournemouth as well, because we are going to need those wins, I think, this season. So let's get on with it and do it. Tony, it's been a pleasure as always. Don't forget, if you want to subscribe, and thank you to all the people that did subscribe after last week's episode. We really do appreciate it. It helps us if you do subscribe. So if you could just hit that subscribe button, it's all free, of course, and we'll see you next time.